Um, this is really a unique spot. Can you hear me all right? It's what I call a memorial. And it's a memorial to the memory of 10 coal miners who lost their lives when mining here at a depth of about 700 feet. This is about the location of the shaft of the coal mine, and the accident, the flooding of the mine, occurred on September 9th, 1889. It was called the White Ash Coal Mine, and it was one of the larger coal mines in the foothills area, the area between here and Boulder. It probably had mining operations that started in the 1860s, about the same time that the clay mining started. And here on kind of the south edge of the Clear Creek Valley, there was some exposure of coal, and that's why they started mining. And the beds of sandstone here still dip very steeply, and so did the coal. If you look up there at some of those sandstone and clay layers, you see they're still almost vertical. Now, we know a lot about this mine primarily because of Arthur Lakes, for whom the library is named. We've come to the spot here called 7A along 12th Street. And 7A means that to the original trail, which is on your brown diagram, there's 7 and 8, but not 7A. We've added quite a bit of history to this in the last rendition of the trail guide, finished last year. This is a view of the White Ash coal mine buildings in the late 1800s. And you see here the chimney coming off the boiler where they operated the hoist in the shaft by steam. And if you look off in that direction, about the direction I'm pointed, you see another mine up there that was called the Loveland Mine. And there's several other mines in the Clear Creek Valley. Well, this is a cross section running parallel to the coal. And the coal trended from here out North 35 west, from this mine to that mine. And this is Clear Creek between them. They mined under Clear Creek. There in the cross section you see Clear Creek, and there's the Loveland Mine shaft to the north, and this is the White Ash Mine here to the south. These are haulage roads going from the shaft, which is vertical, and those are horizontal roads that were drifted off from the shaft at different elevations that are lifted, 400, 860. So I said 700, I guess 730 is where they were mining here. The 860 tells you how far they'd mined out away from the shaft. They mined both to the south, almost as far as the rec center, and to the north toward this Loveland Mine. On that day, September 9th, in the afternoon, water from this mine, which had flooded, came over and entered the workings of this White Ash Mine and filled to a depth of about 300 feet. And these B, C, D, E, E are, as best they could reconstruct, where the miners were working. Now, there was an early report from the Golden School of Mines in 1889 that talked about this fatal accident, and that was later repeated by Ammons of the U.S. Geological Survey in 1896, and much of it is the history that was put together by the Colorado Mines inspector. So this mine was inspected to see that it was operated safely, and they realized that there was a fire between the two mines, but they didn't think that it posed any particular danger. In other words, the coal was burning, and it burned to where the seal or the barrier between the mines was broken, and that mine, which had been flooded, the water in the mine drained in to this workings here. The workings had a total of about 2,000 feet, in other words, a half a mile, that they mined these coals. And their mining technique was to put in a haulage road and then mine up on the coal till they mined it out. Then they'd go down another 100 feet and do the same thing. And that's called stoping. And what they do is that they don't want to dig straight down, because you got to lift that coal out. If you mine up on it, you can blast it, mine it, have it dropped into a ore car like that, and haul it out. They hauled it to same way as the clay, to a coal terminal about where those two flags are on those yellow poles, and that's where they shipped it then to Denver, and that was one of the big industrial operations here. This sketch was made by Arthur Lakes when he talked about the coal mining in this district in this 1889 report. And you see it gives the main seam of the coal, and there's a second seam. Now that's like a cross section along 12th Street, and we're standing about where this shaft is. So he had actually made a diagram of the mine and said they went down and then they drifted over in a tunnel to the coals, and then that working you see there was along the coal seam itself. So that's why this is here.
So where was the shaft was here?
It's covered and buried, so we don't know exactly where it was. But from his sketches here, knowing where these sandstone ridges are with these little thin coal seams, we're pretty sure that it's about in this location. And now, that monument used to be over where that athletic field is. And when they put in those new fields a year ago, they brought the monument over and just kind of dumped it here. And Steve and I kind of got on them, the buildings and grounds, they ought to clean this up. There was kind of a little pit here, and it was, so they did a nice job with it. That's a granite stone, and those 10 names of the miners are on the plaque there, and you'll notice a little loop chain there, 3 lengths of a chain. That indicated that those fellows were odd fellows. That's a lodge, a service lodge. It still exists. And we had the grandson of a lodge member on a trip here a couple of years ago, and he said they still operate 4 miners' families' retirement homes. And when they got ready to try to get a better memorial here, local people in Golden, they contacted the Odd Fellows Lodge, and they gave them $35,000 for a sculpture of a miner to commemorate him. And they decided they wanted to put that down along Clear Creek on a trail. That is the local group. And we were already working on this up here as a new addition for our guide, and made them aware of what we were doing. Well, they ran into some land ownership problems and they weren't able to complete their plans. Maybe they will someday. In the meantime, the Oddfellows gave them $35,000 for that sculpture of the miner called the White Ash Miner. And they decided that they wanted to put it, at least temporarily, in the museum. So if you're in the museum, come to the north window and you'll see that sculpture. Very well done in terms of also a memorial looking out over this. So if you look at this mining equipment, it was kind of scattered around the campus, and once Buildings and Grounds started working on this little program here, whenever something came up, instead of hauling that equipment off to a dump, they brought it down here. So this is the old ore car. And that's what a piece of coal looks like. Now that coal is not from this mine because they're never able to pump the water out and recover the bodies. It's a bituminous coal from western Colorado. But that's the subbituminous coal is what they mined here, something like this.
Some of you who've been at school long enough recognize this ore card as being the one right outside of Bertha Hall.
Yeah.
And you probably were going, where did our ore card go?
Well, here it is.
And here it is. And I have to say, after we started this project and working with Buildings and Grounds and all the rest of it, we didn't ask them to put this ore card down here. One day it just showed up down here. Disappeared from Bertha because of the new landscaping and everything else. And the Buildings and Grounds people found the perfect spot for it.
They did.
Which we think is right here.
Anyway, that's a sad note, but it's something that we shouldn't forget, and that's the risk of natural resource processing, mining, and so on. You can reduce the risk, you can do a lot of things, but you can never eliminate it completely.
You know, one of the funny things that happened to me this summer is with the Alumni Association, I took a trip to Iceland to look at things in Reykjavik, their capital. Guess what they have over there? An Odd Fellows Lodge.
Yeah, do they?
I didn't tell Bob that.
Yeah.
With the 3 rings. The 3 rings, by the way, because it is a service organization, oftentimes you'll see, I believe the letters are F, L, and S associated with the rings. Friendship, love, and service. Really, like he pointed out, a neat organization.
And every year that I've come down and passed by this monument of granite, sometime in September 9th or thereafter, there's always a little bouquet that somebody's brought here. That's it. 6 o'clock. If you're down by the museum, there are a couple diagrams there that you want to look at someday. Quite a bit about the history of mines going back to 1864, and that's the start of the Mine Geology Trail, and you go from there up to stop 2. We circumvented that to save a little time. Yeah. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.